I'm Jeremy White, and I think these Panthers have some bite.
I'm Joe Marino, and I think the Bills have some ripe opportunities against this Panthers defense.
I'm the big O Jerry Ostroski. Can we just play another game, please? This is the Locked On Network, and you're watching Bill Squad.
Who's ready, Bills Mafia? It's the Bills Squad. Everything Buffalo Bills, every week. Breaking down the big hits and game-changing plays the way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. So gear up and squad up. The Bill Squad show starts now.
And welcome in, Bills Mafia. Jeremy White, the big O Jerry Ostroski, and of course, Joe Marino of the Locked On Bills podcast. Find everything he does at thejoemarino.com. We talk to you twice a week here on the Bills Squad show, usually a post game, and then midweek, and of course with a bye week, we've talked an awful lot without a game, as Jerry put it so rightly. Let's get a game going so we get some more stuff to talk about. Meanwhile, today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. On the Locked On Network, it is Crossover Thursday. Joe has his episode with Julian Council, who covers the Panthers. So make sure you're checking out Crossover Thursday to see what the other side is saying with Bills and Panthers set to go Sunday, 1 o'clock. We're going to get to a lot today. Maxwell Hairston's expectations. You're allowed to call him just Max. He cleared that up, by the way, for everybody out there.
Thank you.
You can call him Max, but if you're writing it in print, he wants Maxwell. So on paper, Maxwell, in conversation, Max. There you go, Joe. So, make a note in your program. The impact Michael Hoecht can make, Larry Ogunjobi, what's going on with Taylor Rapp, and, of course, the offensive injuries, lots and lots to get to as the Bills kind of hit this turning point in their season. So, hello, thank you. Give us a like and a subscribe. Jump on the chat. Drop us a comment as well. We'll get to your comments as the show goes along. Jerry, thank you for saying let's get a game in. I have even self-diagnosed myself as, holy cow, how can we talk about the Bills in any other way without them finally getting on the field again? We need it desperately, Jer.
I'll tell you, you had the 2 losses, then the bye week. We knew this was going to be an ugly analytical couple of weeks, and it has been. We have scoured the basement as far as trying to find reasons why this offense hasn't been producing, why the Bills have lost. The best cure for bad football is to play more football. And, the only way they're going to get out of this is to play another game. And hopefully this game down in Charlotte will get the Bills right, get things going again, and we can put this in the rear view. But it's been frustrating and in some cases trying the last few weeks.
Yeah. I laid it out. They've never lost 3 in a row in the Sean McDermott era. And if this little lull feels different, I kind of laid this out during the week on WGR. I went back and I looked at all the other 2-game losing streaks, and a couple of them were goofy losing streaks. This one, they didn't look great in 2 straight games. They have another 2-game losing streak where one of them is an overtime loss to Tom Brady and the Bucs. One's an overtime loss to the Eagles, along the way. And every time they had a 2-game losing streak in the past, they played the next week, sometimes as soon as 6 days later. So this one it's just had too much time to sit and maybe too much time for us to kind of look at the same problems. That said, Joe, they've got an opportunity, and you laid out in your episode 9 fixes for this team. They have an opportunity to kind of turn their season and show us what they're going to be. And lining up with that are these defensive reinforcements. Max Hairston, Michael Hoecht, Larry Ogunjobi. I feel like those 3 names have been said a million times, and finally we'll start to see what that's going to look like on the field.
Yeah, it's no small deal. You mentioned the the Bills have never lost 3 in a row under McDermott. Of course, they're undefeated out of the bye. So you'd like to think those are some good metrics for the Bills to get a win on Sunday. But yes, the defensive reinforcements are very exciting. They're very meaningful. I'd actually want to start with mentioning Larry Ogunjobi and this metric that I keep going back to, and that 60% of the Bills' defensive tackle snaps this year have been played by rookies or practice squad players. And Larry Ogunjobi is a veteran that has seen, different run schemes. He knows how to rush the passer. When he's been in a penetration style single gap defense in the past, he's played his best football. And I think that's very, very notable, especially if the Bills aren't going to have Daquan Jones this week. I'd certainly love to see this defensive tackle room at full strength. But then, I think Michael Hoecht is a big part of the possibilities with this scheme and 5-man fronts. And, being creative out of base and sim pressures and his versatility and athleticism. And so I'm excited to get more of an understanding of the intent of these additions. Of course, Maxwell Hairston feels like that's down the line, but it's also imminent. And so these defensive reinforcements are necessary. They're giving us some hope. And I'm really, really fired up to see these guys in the front on Sunday.
Exactly. I think Ogunjobi's the biggest addition, like you said, Joe, with some of the guys we've had to play with. But I want to kind of dampen use the word hope just a little bit. It's been a long time since these guys played. Now, granted, Michael Hoecht talked about how he went to, I think it was Hamburg's softball field he's been working out on before he was able to come back to Buffalo. And I know these guys have been ramped up the last few weeks in the facility, but still, NFL regular season game speed's different than the preseason. It's going to take a minute. But that being said, I am excited as well, especially with Michael Hoecht and the addition of a lot of stuff that he can do. Really curious to see. This is where I think the addition of Ryan Nelson comes in, and we know that he's been a part of that D-line and that front seven and pressure packages all through the preseason and during the year. Really curious to see how he employs Hoecht in this defense on Sunday.
Jerry, when you got your first regular season game action in a while, whether that was a new season or after missing for an injury or even a bye week, like how long do you think it'll take these guys to feel right? Is it weeks? Is it a couple of plays just to kind of feel that real live contact? If they're going to be rusty, how long do you think it is? Is it different for each guy?
I think it's different for each guy. I think it's different, during circumstances. I will say this. I think it's a little easier for defensive people than offensive players, if that makes sense. I think as a lineman, I missed 10 weeks, came back from a tibial plateau fracture, played in New England, I think that first game back. And it takes a little bit of time, because I'm working in conjunction with 5 others. Hoecht and Ogunjobi, it's, you got your gap control. They got to know the schemes and how to run things. But, just that, early on, getting hit in the face a little bit, kind of, shaking like a dog in a ditch, and you're back in it, and all of a sudden all the feels and the memories and everything comes back. I'd be a little bit less optimistic if these guys were first, second, third-year guys. These are multi-year vets in the league. They understand what it takes, and I think they'll be fine. But it will take a little bit of time, and usually first couple of shots, you shake it off, you get back in the fields, and you're okay.
On Michael Hoecht, we got a comment right away. I want to ask you what you guys think about this. Ogunjobi, one part of it. Hoecht the other. What percentage of snaps do you think Hoecht will see? Feels like we have him labeled as our savior. However, the formula for McDermott has been, if you miss time, you miss out on snaps, right? Not practicing usually equals not playing. But if he's fully healthy, which he has been, and he actually impressed a lot of people. I know you, Joe, in the preseason, and me too. Like he was noticeable in the preseason. So I feel like he'll be ready. Ideally, what is his snap share and where is his snap share?
Well, I think right away you look at the 10 to 20 snaps the Bills have been getting from the combination of Javon Solomon and Landon Jackson. I think that's kind of initially where you want to sprinkle him in. But I think as the ramp up happens, that he becomes more of a 40, 45, 50% of snaps player, which I think helps you get Bosa in the range that you want him to be. And even eating into Epinesa right now, who's been above 40% of snaps so far this season. So I think there's snaps there to be claimed. And, immediately, though, I think it's that 10 to 20 range that we've seen for Solomon and Jackson.
I think the other thing is, where do they employ him in base packages? Is he on the field in base packages or not? I don't know if we'll see that right away. But against a team like the Carolina Panthers that have Chuba, Hubbard, and Dowdle running the ball, and they want to run the ball and establish it. I know that Bryce Young has talked about trying to play this week. Obviously, if he doesn't, it'll be Andy Dalton. So you would think that they're going to rely on the running game and play action and those types of things with a vet like Dalton taking snaps. So that being said, do they try to bring him in on some base stuff this week? I don't know. The things that I'm looking forward to is third down pass rush production. And then the other thing that's not talked about that I think is infectious, and we have it with one guy for sure, and Joey Bosa, maybe a couple others, that motor that he plays with is going to bring that defense along even more. I think that energy and attitude are infectious. That defense needs all defenses usually have a attitude guy. And you watch Bosa, he's not vocal, he's not a showboater, but he plays really, really hard. Hoecht brings that same type of energy. Anytime you can bring that to the field, that makes me excited, and that's something I really want to see and how that affects that group, especially on third down.
Trying to think of the guys that would bring that in years past. I'm thinking about Milano, thinking about Taron Johnson, Poyer and Hyde over the years too. And it strikes me that the Bills have had older vets to bring the juice, and they've kind of been waiting for the changing of the guard there. And is that Hoecht? Is that Hairston? Who are their next people that can do that? They kind of whatever, get the juices flowing. You said juice, like get some bite back in this defense, the attitude they play with.
Go ahead, Joe.
I'll say Benford's also a name there that I think has that competitive strain about him, but I think it's a really good call out. We can talk about metrics and schemes, but ultimately this defense needs to play with more tenacity and more energy. And, Jerry, I know you're an offensive player, and I love offensive players. You guys are really smart, and you draw up cool plays, and they work out. Everyone's working together, but defense is different, right? Those guys are different.
Right.
These are guys that are wanting to hunt and chase and not know where the ball's going and figure out how to get there and play through 300-pound men to tackle a football. It's a different kind of situation, and I think it's a good call out. We need to see that from this defense, and my goodness, they've been called out. Like, go back to this entire offseason. Brandon Beane called out this defense at every turn that he could. The problem's the defense, Jeremy, you know it, right? The problem's the defense. And then not only his words, but his actions and where that he invested free agent dollars and draft picks was to help this defense. I mean, they got to feel this. They got to know. They got to feel this urgency. And I'm hopeful that coming out of the bye as they start to get these reinforcements that we do see more of that tenacity and urgency and competitive fire that you need to see out of a defense.
Well, think about this on third down now. We've seen it out of Ed Oliver. He's been hurt and missed a bunch of games, but he's an attitude, energy guy, a twitchy dude, celebrates plays and all of that. Now on third down on Sunday, I'm looking at Bosa. I'm looking at Hoecht. Okay. We've got Ed Oliver. Now I'd like to see Hoecht and Rousseau flip. I'd rather see Rousseau standing up over top of a guard as opposed to Hoecht, but we probably won't. But still, now all of a sudden that pass rush looks a lot different than it used to be. And it's going to help because, hopefully Hoecht gets in the roll on a roll quickly. And now maybe it limits some of the sim stuff we have to call and blitzes we have to call to get pressure. And we can try to play coverage a little bit better. So that's some of the areas that I'm looking at.
We are less than 2 weeks from the trade deadline. I don't know that they'll be trading on the defensive line. I want to bring up a comment here from Derek, who writes in, did you see Quinnen Williams is reportedly available? Now, that is something that came down today. Connor Hughes covers the Jets, reported Quinnen Williams could be had for about a second-round pick. He's expressed he's unhappy. Now, this is an easy one to just kind of say no because of the cap. But, if you could make stuff happen, if you could trade away Epinesa and Curtis Samuel, I mean, the price would be crazy. But Quinnen Williams, who is PFF's number 1 graded defensive tackle against the run this year, number 10 overall, he may be on the move for a 2. And if the Bills don't get him, guys, is he worthy of watching who does? In this AFC, which might be wide open, if he goes to a contender, I mean, that could be a big deal.
You think the Jets are trading him to the Bills? Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem. I give up the 2, give up the 1. I don't care.
Yeah,
but they ain't sending him to the Bills. I'd be pretty surprised if that happened.
I would love that more than anything in life itself. And I think Quinnen Williams. I think Quinnen Williams would benefit from being on the Bills because he has a kind of an ability to be a bit of a malcontent. Put him in that locker room with that leadership. Put him next to Ed Oliver. Oh my Lord.
Yeah.
Can we start a GoFundMe after the show and get this done?
Send the 1 to the Jets for Quinn and send the 2 to Miami for Jalen Waddle. Let's go, right? Those teams aren't trading those players to the Bills, though.
I saw the Dolphins have restructured the deal for Jordan Brooks, linebacker Jordan Brooks, which is usually a precursor to trade him somewhere because you lower the cap hit, and he might be on the move soon. So I don't know that that's happening with the Bills and Dolphins, but maybe we are getting close to trade time. Joe, I know you have your lockdown episode of the trade targets as well. So we're getting down to it less than 2 weeks. Meanwhile, we talked Hoecht and Ogunjobi. I want to get to Hairston and a callback to, Joe, your conversation, one of your previous episodes with Bruce Nolan about the secondary and what this secondary is aiming to be. So Rapp comes out and Poyer likely goes in, right? Rapp is out with a knee injury that had been a problem since training camp, but he'd not appeared on the injury report, and now he's out. And they're gathering information on it. I'm just going to give that a okay. So Jordan Poyer goes in, And Max Hairston, I'm starting to think he could be in soon. The reports are he looks good at practice. Could they give him a limited number of reps and kind of work him in the same way that they platooned Dorian Strong in? Like, wouldn't they maybe want to look at that before going full go? But the question is, Hairston's skill set and how the Bills needed this skill set, how they can employ it, and what Bills fans should be looking for when they do see him out there.
Yeah, I've probably, like you guys, been enjoying all the different videos that come out from the beat reporters that feed us, just seeing him run and change directions. And all right, yeah, it looks pretty good to me. Obviously, there's probably do you know what to do? You can move, great, we need that, but can you actually function the defense? And that's probably the piece that we won't have an idea of. But I think it will be gradual. I know you asked about the skill set. I'll talk about skill set, but I think it will be a gradual situation where it will be a platoon that, as that becomes successful, you give more and more of it. And let's be honest, there's 11 games left. I mean, they can platoon for 3 weeks. And let's assume that this week isn't one of them. Even next week isn't one of them. You could platoon for a few weeks and you're still going to have 5, 6, 7 games of Hairston as a starter going into the playoffs, right? So I'm still very optimistic about how he can help this year. But the skill set with Maxwell Hairston is this guy hunts the football. And he's a really, really aggressive player in zone, right? You're going to be in love with the athletic profile and you're going to think man corner. But I think Kentucky played like 89% zone when they had Hairston, and you saw a really confident player to just keep eyes on the backfield and drive and hunt the football. And he's got really impressive ball skills. And that also shows up in how he triggers and tackles. And I know that he had some tackling warts in 2024 after he was coming back off of a shoulder injury. But before that and in 2023, this is a guy that will stick his face in there and tackle. So you have a very aggressive player. There's going to be some risk reward with that. He's going to drive on a ball that he doesn't get to, and it's going to get completed, and someone's going to run for a bunch of yards. But we'll take it. I'll take that over, what we're seeing out of Trey White and how cautious he has to play just due to the limitations that he has. So this is exactly the kind of corner that I think it gets us excited based on what we've watched for the first six games of this year.
Definitely. I mean, you look at a guy, and the thing about it is, how comfortable is he wearing that knee brace, and how comfortable is he with his health as he comes back? Because as Joe talked about, he is a very good zone corner. And why is that? His athleticism allows him to play with cushion, allows him to play off ball. But when he sees it and reads it, he T-steps and gets downhill and is able to close quickly and close those spaces. So, we play with cushion now, but don't have the ability to close it.
Yeah.
Now you got a guy that can close it. So as he gets more comfortable with where his body is, where he is in space, because that's really the biggest thing with corners. A lineman like myself, when I had my knee injury, you brace it up, you tape it up, you pop a couple of vitamins before the game, and you go out and you drag it around, and you're okay because you're in this little 4x4 box. But these guys got to learn, get that feeling again and all that proprioception back of being in space. That'll be the biggest thing with him. But yeah, I mean, let's be perfectly 100% honest here, though. It can't be worse than it already is. So how slow do you want to bring him back? Because he does have, even with the knee injury, even with the brace, he's probably already athletically better than everybody we have in the secondary.
You mentioned athleticism. Sorry, Joe, I don't mean to cut you off. That's what I was going to get to is Hairston boosts their overall speed in the secondary, a secondary that maybe doesn't have that. And also like Rapp coming out. I know Poyer might not be the peak of athleticism right now. Do you feel like Poyer in there could help Hairston in these early stages?
I would like to think so. I mean, Poyer is a guy I remember. I think it was the Baltimore game where he had a couple of big interceptions. And I don't think Micah Hyde played in that game. And I remember Jordan Poyer having some type of comment afterwards where he was talking with maybe some beat reporters. And he says, you guys didn't think I was going to be able to get it done? Like, no, Micah, like you didn't forget that I was here and we can get it figured out. And I think that, Poyer is that type of vocal guy that I think can extend himself to help bring along these younger players. And I think Taylor Rapp had a lot on his plate and just trying to help Cole Bishop, much less we're starting to extend that to the rest of the room. I think that's something that's worth mentioning, but I think that Poyer does help bring along Hairston in a different kind of way.
With Poyer, as far as he goes, it's a couple of different areas. One is, he loves Buffalo. He loves playing for the Bills. He's got a pride about him, and he's getting another opportunity, and he knows this is his last one. So I'm sure he wants to go out on a certain note. And there's something about that with old school vets, and they know they're at the end of their career. They want to go out on a high note. And the thing that excites me is being on the practice squad and practicing and giving scout looks and all that stuff. There's a humbling side to that when you've been the man for so long. So you learn to appreciate things that maybe you haven't appreciated in the past because you see them differently. The other thing is this, being on the practice squad and everything, he understands his athletic limitations at this age. So it's allowed him to work on things differently than maybe he's done them, and then add the high mental capacity of what he knows and how he can run this offense. You're going to see maybe a little bit different of a player. Now, I'm sure that if he gets an opportunity to take somebody's head off across the middle, he's going to do it like he's always done it. But still, there's different ways to get the plays. And as an older guy, you start relying more on your brains than maybe just raw athletic ability. And that's what you're going to see out of Poyer, maybe a little bit more player under control and a guy that understands where he needs to be. And I'm excited to see it. I think it's going to be – there's a lot of things this weekend that I'm fired up to see. And it's not just let's go play a game so we ain't got to relive the last 3 weeks. But there's some things like this that I really want to get a good look at.
Jeremy, you're on mute, but I'll take advantage of the opportunity to ask Jerry a question here. Because I think there's a lot of commentary about Maxwell Hairston and getting him on the field. And the other side of that, even as it relates to Jordan Hancock, is, well, it can't be worse, right? It can't be worse than Trey White. It can't be worse than Taylor Rapp. So just put Hancock in there or put Hairston in there. And I can certainly understand where that's coming from. But from a player's perspective, what level of concern should there be about putting somebody in a situation that maybe they're not quite ready for, and maybe the effect on confidence and just overall trajectory as a player? Have you seen maybe that happen? And is that something that we should be mindful of? Yeah,
you see it happen all the time, and it usually revolves around first-round quarterbacks playing it behind terrible offensive lines and giving them no weapons, and then saying you're the savior of the franchise, and them just not having a chance from jump, and then the confidence goes out the window. So yes, there's a lot of that to it. I'm not sure we saw much of that. I know that a lot of people like to try to blame that on the fall of Kaiir Elam on this. I don't think that was the case with Kaiir Elam. I just think he was a horrible fit and I don't like to use the B word when I talk about guys that don't make it, but maybe he was rated higher than he should have been. But when I look at young guys, that is probably the biggest concern, Joe. You make a great point, is that when you lose confidence, you lose that swagger, you lose that cockiness and some of the things you need, especially as a secondary player, and it's hard to get them back. It really is. So I guess that is probably the fine line, putting him out there. So you have to, as a coach, be very cognizant of what situations do I put them in. Just like early, we've talked about Max Hairston being a great zone player, and he is. But knowing his athletic ability, hey, man, it doesn't take a lot to onboard somebody to say, go play man. Maybe, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go play man. I know there's different ways to play it. Outside leverage, inside leverage, where's my help? But seriously, go get your hands on that dude and go play man and carry him downfield. So maybe, to me anyway, give him some of those reps that are a little bit easier mentally, and then start easing him in.
All right, we'll get a break in quickly. The B word you mentioned, Jerry, bust, which
no, I'm not saying it.
No, it's okay. I think it's been used quite liberally the last couple of days about a certain Bills receiver. Let's get into whether or not that is, in fact, something we should apply at this time, or if it's too soon, of course, to do that. We got to talk about Keon Coleman when we get back, because there's a big focus on him this week for a lot of reasons. So that's coming up next here on the Bill Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. That's right. Prize Picks. You can make everyday decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Prize Picks offers you the chance to have a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown. You're in the game. So it's quick and make a lineup in under a minute. Prize Picks added stacks if you want to ride with a player, select pass yards, rush yards, touchdowns, all in one lineup, and a fun-to-follow other players in the app and copy their lineups with one click as well. So there's also the injury reboot feature. Your player leaves early and doesn't return, it will not count against you. Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's the code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Back here on the Bill Squad show, talked a lot about Max Hairston, Larry Ogunjobi, Michael Hoecht in that first segment. How about someone who we really may be looking to a lot this week? Let's talk about Keon Coleman and the conversation around him, because he flashed in the opener, and since then it's been a lot of nothing. There's been a disciplinary issue. Wide receiver, always a sensitive subject around the Bills, right? Okay, we can also. So, Joe, Coleman has been a topic for a lot of reasons. One, because one of your fixes for this offense was to stop making him the number one target in the passing game. So, again, the B word, without going all the way to B word, what's the right spot to be landing on Coleman right now? And is there room for him to still be a big contributor to this offense, given the limitations, given how they deploy him?
Yeah. So right now, Keon Coleman's the most targeted receiver player, tight ends, all of them on the team. He's the most targeted player on the team, and he's the receiver that's played the most snaps on the team by over 40 snaps. And that's really where I take exception. I don't think we have to go to that length of saying that Keon Coleman's a bust. He's 22 years old and really hasn't been committed to playing just football for that long. He obviously has some natural ability, but I just don't think it's warranted for him to be this involved, to be the number one guy that Josh Allen throws the football to be the receiver that's on the field the most. That's where I just don't make sense of it, because you've had some positives for sure, but you've also had a return from injury that the GM and head coach were openly disappointed with. He's been disciplined twice, and we've seen a lot of inconsistency with where those targets go. I mean, I don't have to validate that. Sean McDermott, Josh Allen, me, you, we all have two eyes. We can see that there's not a lot of consistency or efficiency when the ball is thrown to Keon Coleman. So I think step one is just acknowledging that right now, Keon Coleman isn't the player that deserves those opportunities. It doesn't mean that he can't help this team right now. That doesn't mean that he can't be a bigger part of the equation at some point. But for a team where everything is earned, I really don't see this, especially when there's a youth factor to it. That's it just doesn't add up to me. And I don't know, I can't help but think about how intentional the Bills and Josh Allen were about saying, well, this is the guy that Josh wanted, right? Scouted all these receivers. He loves the draft, wanted Keon Coleman. He gets him. And I think the other side of that is now there's ownership, right? Now there's ownership in the move. And I've heard offensive coordinators talk about this, where they like to ask their players, like, what plays do you like? Like, pick a play. And the reason that they'll do that is because when they call that play in the game, they're going to have ownership in it, and they're going to want to make sure it works. Like, yeah, if I told the OC to put this in, boy, when they call it, you better believe it, we're going to get that done. And so I do have some level of suspicion that there's an urgency or a feeling from Josh Allen to maybe validate his influence here. And that's why he gets wide-eyed and excited when he's isolated up one-on-one and just throws it up to him, which to me feel like wasted downs. And so it feels like the simplest explanation to me is always the truth. That's where I always go when I'm trying to figure something out. And I don't have consistency with the results. I have discipline issues. I have a return from injury that doesn't, it's been openly criticized, and it doesn't lead to number one target getter, number one snap taker. So I think we have to acknowledge that that's inappropriate, but also, how can he help you? That's where the conversation has to go. How can you maximize Keon Coleman right now? And I think it is the physicality, it's in breaking routes, it's scramble drill. It's just not a volume piece, right? It's RPO glance route, get leverage, we'll stick it to you. It can't be Christian Gonzalez or AJ Terrell one-on-one. Let's back shoulder this thing. That's not going to work. So they got to find ways for it to be successful. Those are some ideas, but it can't be number one piece of this passing offense.
Exactly. I think, you talked about, the routes that he does run well. You got to look at maybe scheming him up a little bit to try to get him involved. I think the best thing he does, is in the scramble route situation, something that we can talk about where we haven't seen Josh Allen have a lot of success over the last 2 weeks of getting out of the pocket and making those plays. You realize this, I think against the Falcons, he had one Josh Allen-like scramble to the right. And what did he do? He threw that ridiculous pass to Kaiir on the sideline that was overturned because he had his foot out of bounds, but still that throw was sick. And those are the types of throws he makes. That's an area that I think Keon can help with. But honestly, folks, right now, if you look at the best thing that Keon Coleman does, he is a red zone target. That's the best thing I think he brings to the equation. He's had 4 red zone targets. He's got 3 catches and 2 touchdowns. That's right now probably the best thing that he does. And maybe bring physicality in the run game when you're trying to lock guys up outside and get big plays from James Cook. So, yeah, I mean, everything falls in line with what Joe had to say. It doesn't make sense to try to take a guy. I mean, if I've got a 35-foot motorhome, I'm not going to buy a front-wheel drive Accord to pull it, right? And that's kind of that's kind of the situation we're in.
Yeah.
All right. And that's what it's misuse of equipment, and they got to figure out what he does well and let him do it.
There's been a lot of belief about Coleman, his fit being a big slot. When he was drafted, many people thought big slot as a prospect. Do you guys agree with that? Or would there also be limitations there in terms of his ability to produce? He could be a big slot, but would he be the best slot option the Bills could have? Like, his path there is blocked. So, all right, if we're finding spots where he can contribute, is that one that maybe, we see going forward, or would that also be a little bit limited?
This is a really big talking point amongst Bills Mafia, and I can understand the idea. I do think it would make some things better for Keon Coleman based on his limitations as a route runner, and now you have two-way goes. But I think there are so many other factors that are more important to me. First of all, that anything that you would want him to do in the slot, I just would way rather have that done by Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid. But secondly, and Eric Turner of Cover One did a great job of articulating this in a recent episode, where when you do play inside, you're closer to the ball and everything happens faster. So now you have a 22-year-old receiver that really hasn't played that much football relative to, somebody that would be in the National Football League playing as much as he does, that would now have to process quicker. It just happens faster, right? That's just what happens. It's a different ball game inside. So, I think there's some complicating factors that we need to be more mindful of, other than, hey, yeah, he might benefit from this, but I don't think the offense benefits from it. And I think we're not giving enough thought or consideration to how much faster it happens on the inside and what that means for a player that's already pretty raw.
I think the offense, when he's healthy, and we saw it over the last couple games that he played, and they schemed to him and he made big plays. I think we keep forgetting, and we haven't heard the name Curtis Samuel in quite some time. And when Curtis Samuel was right, you all of a sudden saw a lot of the things he did. And if Curtis is playing, that probably limits some of the stuff they're trying to ask Keon to do. And now with him out again, and when he comes back, I have no idea, that puts the pressure on others.
Samuel limited, Kincaid limited earlier this week, and Coleman is healthy, Shavers is healthy. There's the long-term conversation. But Joe, as we look at the Panthers, like, this part of this episode is we're previewing this game against the Panthers. They have J.C. Horn. Is Carolina likely to do what these other teams have done, which is say, like, all right, I'm going to, especially without Josh Palmer, if he's week to week and he's out, throw J.C. Horn over on Coleman. We're playing 10-on-10, and a whole side of the field is limited. Like, how much does that allow a defense to really clamp down on Kincaid if he's available in this game, and Shakir if he's available in this game, and also the run game? Will there be blitzing until the cows come home again by Carolina? Because right now that seems to be what teams want to do to these Bills.
So good stuff. I already recorded my primer episode of Bills-Panthers, and I go through my keys, and one of my keys that I get into is Keon Coleman versus J.C. Horn is not a good matchup for the Bills. And I don't think the Panthers have to commit J.C. Horn to Keon Coleman, but under the understanding that Keon Coleman is the most targeted player in this Bills offense, you might as well put your best player on him, and especially if they're not going to have Joshua Palmer. So I think that will be part of Carolina's recipe. Now, there's a couple of things here that get me very excited about Buffalo's offense against Carolina. First of all, this might be the worst pass rush in the league. They are last in pressure rate. They're last in pressure rate over expectation. They're 26th in sack rate, and they're the only team in the NFL that doesn't have a quarterback sack that is charged to the other team's quarterback. And if you don't understand protection schemes, sometimes quarterbacks are responsible for a player. That means that Carolina has not yet generated a sack where the quarterback was able to miss ID a free runner and get sacked. They struggle there. They don't have the horses off the edge. They have some injuries. They have good things about their defense, but it's not their pass rush. The other thing is this is a Carolina Panthers defense that has given up the highest EPA per target to opposing tight ends. When other teams throw the ball to tight ends against Carolina, they're 22 of 26 for 250 yards and 4 touchdowns. It's a passer rating of 146.3. They're also 22nd in EPA per target against opposing slot receivers. Doesn't have to be about it should not be about Keon Coleman in this game. This has to be about Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox and Khalil Shakir and those as your catalyst for the passing offense, where those are your best options. That's where Carolina's defense is the weakness. They don't have a pass rush. Come on now. This is pretty obvious. And I feel like I've said this a couple times recently, so I feel some type of way. But to me, the recipe is quite clear on how to attack this Panthers defense.
I agree. I also think, and I agree with Joe, and his shows that he's had recently have been on point and outstanding. But talking about the 9 things the Bills can do, and can we get back to our big man packages again, please? Can we get back to our big sets and do what we do? And I'd almost like to see Alec Anderson involved if we need to bring him in and have him involved. Because think about it. If you want to take Kincaid and just say you're a slot, sure. And instead of having 3 tight ends, have Kincaid in the slot and have Alec Anderson play the role of Kincaid. You look at this team and they're top 5 in EPA per play. I mean, they're plus 0.13, and this is without a really good vertical passing game at all. So obviously they have a formula for what works for them, which is run the football, short routes, yards after catch, and those types of things. And yeah, those are the things I'd like to see. I think the writing's on the wall. I mean, obviously they got to run it, they got to control it, and then, hit your Kincaid and that type of stuff as well. So I think the writing's on the wall. Everything's right there for them. Let's not try to be something we're not and go back to our roots.
One of the biggest things that I wanted to communicate in that 9 things episode was very much, leaning into your big people, which is what Jerry just said. But a huge part of that was being 2-dimensional out of those heavy personnel sets. And for the Bills to have 78% of their throws out of 11 personnel bothers me. And that's where I think you can really take advantage of the dynamic run scheme and success you have running the football, is being more 2-dimensional when those players are on the field. And the results when the Bills do that are off the charts. I tweeted it out this past week, like every personnel grouping and what Josh Allen's passing stats are, and they are comfortably at their best, not in 11 personnel. Now I understand you're always going to pass the ball the most out of 11 personnel. I'm not asking you to get away from it, but I think that should be a lot closer to maybe 60%, 55%, and a lot more throws out of 12, 21, 13, 22, where the numbers just speak for themselves.
And just to add this, and I think I heard Joe say this earlier in the week, but I'm going to repeat it. When Kincaid is healthy and playing, when Allen throws the ball to Kincaid, his passer rating is 156.1. I mean, that's crazy numbers, right? So obviously, hey, they drafted the guy. They wanted to get tight ends in here and utilize tight ends with what they had going on and the running game and the yards after catch, all these different things, and the short routes and everything else. They've got the guys they need. Why are we masquerading as trying to be the St. Louis Rams and the greatest show on turf? It doesn't make sense.
Come back on the Bill Squad show in just a moment. Got a question about this matchup stopping the Carolina rushing attack, which is dangerous, and the Bills, that's another thing they've got to prove. And one more question about the offense too as we roll on. So drop a comment, like and subscribe. Bills and Panthers on the way. It's crossover Thursday here in the Locked On Network, so make sure you check out Joe's episode crossing over with the Carolina Panthers. A big game for both teams, I've heard it described. We'll explain that as well. It's all coming up here on the Bills Squad show. This episode brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is your chance to score tickets. Maybe it's the World Series coming up. NFL. The NFL season is back, of course. Nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. That's why Game Time, the app, can give you an advantage. as a fan. Game Time is fast, easy, and backed by the Game Time guarantee. You always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. Pull up the Game Time app. Take a look at that World Series. Why not? Take a look at the Carolina game. It's a home game for Joe and everybody down there in Charlotte. So the app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before you buy. Maybe you can get a zone deal. Pick the section. Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. Fast, cheap, and less stressful. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. We're back here on the Bills Squad show as the Bills head to Joe's house, Joe Marino's house. I know you've got an event coming up so big you're asking for RSVPs.
Yeah,
see how it's like a wedding.
Good.
You got to get numbers.
Well, we just don't know, right? I've never done an event in the area. The venue's excited to have me, but they're like, well, how many people are going to come? I don't know. So we just encourage people to RSVP, and boy, we're glad we did, because they're definitely having to make some accommodations. We're expecting a great turnout on Saturday.
Rumor is they bought one of those throne deals.
Oh, geez.
And four of his moderators from his Discord channel are going to each have a deal, and they're going to carry him in through the streets of Charlotte.
I need it. Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be wonderful. None of them are going to be there. I'm showing up with just me and the locals here, so it'll be fun.
You'll be at the game though, so
yes.
Right, you're going to the game. And a quick note for programming: like, we will not have a post game immediately following Carolina. We're going to do a show on Monday. There are going to be a couple times where we do that. So for those of you looking for us in post game, our post game show will basically be a Monday after. So something to keep in mind. All right, guys, some of the numbers on Rico Dowdle and what the Panthers can do for talking about this matchup. He is very, very good, very effective. They got Chuba Hubbard in there as well. But just, I think, a good way to look at what Rico Dowdle has done for the Panthers. Yards over expected per rush this year. James Cook is 8th. James Cook is good. James Cook has been top 10 in the last 3 years. And Rico Dowdle is sitting at 3rd in rush yards over expected per run. And percentage of runs with yards over expected, these are the 3rd and 4th best backs in the league. Dowdle 3, Cook 4. So one way to look at it is the Bills are playing against James Cook. You know, he's a pretty good back. He can take it the distance. He's had some big numbers. So what kind of challenges do the Bills have ahead of them in stopping this Carolina run game?
It's a physical group. I think that's what it comes down to. I mean, Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, they're both 210 and running the 4.5s. These are not like speed backs, but it's the combination of how they run, really physical players, and then an offensive line that is really, really big, and they're maulers up front, and they've done a really good job of kind of figuring that out. It took them a long time. They've invested a lot of draft capital, a lot of free agent dollars, but it's finally come together. And Harold Godwin, their O-line coach, has done a really good job. They've had 6 different O-line combinations in the last 7 games, and it doesn't seem to matter. They've been able to get it done. And so I think it starts with their offensive line, their commitment. It's 2 good backs. Dowdle had 1,300 scrimmage yards last year for Dallas and couldn't find a deal, right? He signed with Carolina 1 year, $2.75 million. And he's a really interesting story where he's a UDFA in 2020, didn't do a thing in the NFL until last year. And then he gets 1,300 scrimmage yards and comes to Carolina. And now he's getting his opportunity, and he's really taking advantage. I don't want to be this guy because I hate being, who did they play? Well, I mean, they did play the Dolphins and Cowboys, which are 2 really poor run defenses. So I think that's something to be mindful of. And those were home games for them. So I think that's somewhat inflating things. But I think collectively it's a physical offensive line with 2 physical backs, and be a good test for Buffalo.
Really, though, I mean, we can break down this Panthers offense as long as we want. We all know the story of this game. In my opinion, it's going to be this offense of the Bills, and can they get back on track?
Yeah.
I mean, this is the situation at hand. I mean, you look at the Panthers team. If they run the ball, okay, that's fine. Run the ball. That means you're not throwing it and getting explosives and scoring fast. But we want to see what this Bills offense does. The one thing on defense, I want to see how Hoecht fits in, Ogunjobi. We talked about that earlier in the show. And then also, is Jordan Poyer going to line up in the defensive backfield? We'll see how he acclimates. Doubt we see Max Hairston, but who knows? He might show up and make an appearance. So really, the names change, but the song remains the same. It's this team is in 2 years is 15-1 when they score 30+ points a game. They're 2-7 when they don't. and I want to see what this offense does. And I think that's the biggest thing, a point of emphasis in this matchup this weekend.
Well, I think it's a great point, because I think the best thing the Bills can do to help their defense is score, right?
Yes.
To get the Carolina out of the game that they want to play. And with all due respect to Andy Dalton, I think he's a cerebral, veteran, savvy quarterback that'll hit his back foot and go to the right spot with the football. But it is Andy Dalton, who's not a preferred NFL starting quarterback and hasn't been for a long time. And he's got really young receivers. I mean, you're talking a rookie in Tet McMillan, who's good, but he's a rookie. And then Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker, who were rookies last year. It's a very young core of this passing offense with a quarterback in Andy Dalton. That's, he's not always throwing to those guys, right? He's the number 2 quarterback. So I think you have to be really committed to defending the run. I think you have to live with it a little bit if Andy Dalton's going to complete some passes, but don't get gashed into oblivion. But I think bigger than all of that is what this offense does. And let's be honest, if the Bills defense gets gashed, but the Bills win and score a lot of points and Josh Allen looks good, that's all anyone's going to care about.
Can I give you the numbers on that? What you're saying is basically how the offense goes, Bills fans' psyche goes.
Yes.
It's so true. So last year they lost 2 in a row, and they won by 3 in their next week. They lost one more game the rest of the year, and they scored 42 in that game. In 2023, they lost 2 in a row. They won the next game 32-6, and they only lost one more game, and they scored 34 in losing that game. In 2022, they lost back-to-back games. They did not lose again. In 2021, the back-to-back losses were, I already mentioned that, like the Wind game and the Bucks overtime game. So, like, whenever they have these lulls, the last 2 seasons, they made big changes. 2 years ago, they fired their offensive coordinator, big change, and then they got on track. Last year, they get Cooper, and they start scoring and get on track. This year, nothing yet. We'll see. But when I was looking at that, like, how, we always see them go through these lulls. The comeback is very much defined by us feeling better because they're scoring 30 points. Our minds go as the offense goes.
I would say probably the biggest thing for me when I look at this defense and the team right now as we've kind of begun the second quarter of the season, my thing is this: the big difference between this year and last year is the plus-minus ratio in turnovers. Last year, we were strongly number 1 in the league in plus-minus and taking the ball away. This year, we're in the bottom part of the league as far as turnovers go. I'd like to see a big change in that as we move into the latter half of the season.
Here's a stat for you. You guys will know this. It's kind of a funny one, but the Bills have 2 interceptions this year, right? 2. And the players they picked off are
Tua and
it was the Saints game. It was
Chris Olave.
Chris Olave.
Olave.
They've intercepted as many receivers as quarterbacks right now. So, we'd like to see the turnovers come back for this defense. And Olave, if you can't play quarterback down in New Orleans, maybe he can play a receiver for the Bills. I've yet to see that rumor. I'm dying to see a real, honest to goodness rumor. We know Jacoby Myers is on the market. We know now Quinnen Williams maybe could be had. I just don't know what New Orleans is going to do. I know people out there stumping for Olave, stumping for Shaheed. I'm down with both ideas. Just have a hard time believing it's going to happen.
I kind of like the Shaheed side of it because of the return piece, and then that can allow us to move Codrington and, not waste a roster spot on a one-dimensional, one-trick pony.
Yeah.
My suspicion on the trade piece, because a couple weeks ago we had like the Jaguars and Browns trade of Newsome and Campbell, and then there was the Jarvis Brownlee trade, and then there was this thought that these are going to be really regular, weekly thing as we get to the deadline, and then that really hasn't happened. And I'm suspicious that is a very competitive trade market. There's a lot of teams that need receivers. There's a lot of teams that need corners, X factor type things, and I think that teams are willing to kind of let teams bid against each other a little bit. And then once you start to get some dominoes, it'll happen. Like, we didn't get this guy. Okay, so now all their other receivers and their markets are more defined. So I think we need to break the dam, but once the dam breaks, it's going to be pretty big. But I think right now it's just very competitive with a lot of teams that are interested.
Would you bet the Bills have at least one new player after the deadline?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I think so.
Yeah. Right.
I think I'm suspicious that Josh Allen really wants that, and I think Josh Allen gets what Josh Allen wants.
What do you think Josh Allen really wants? It's not going to be a corner, right?
I don't think he wants a corner. I think he wants a receiver.
But
we've seen this. We've seen this. They can't beat man coverage. It's very clear what's going on. That's limiting this entire offense. It's been limiting it for years. No, there's no business for Josh Allen to be the quarterback that year over year is continuously the one that faces the highest amounts of man coverage. So I think he'd like to have somebody that he can rely on to get open in those situations and get this offense really humming.
And I also think the general manager is highly concerned about his perception in the public. And
we know that.
And he also knows that that's what's wanted and that's what he'll do. So you keep that. You're going to see a new player, and I would imagine it'll be a wide receiver.
Well, the good news is I tweeted this during the week, and the injury to Palmer, he's week to week, and Sean McDermott did not rule out IR, which means, that's 4 weeks maybe. And if Bean still does want to say he believes in his receiver group, but Allen comes to him and wants a receiver, all he has to say is listen, we believe in our guys, but our guys are banged up, and I can't go with half a team to try to win the Super Bowl. We're trying to win this thing. So I feel like, if he were to trade for a receiver, there are plenty of people that would say Bean is taking an L by admitting something. And I'm just saying, I think he can try to walk a line and say injuries are a factor here. We need more. We need more.
So you mean doing the exact same thing he's doing with the safety position this week is what you're saying?
Maybe. Yeah. Let me ask you about that, Jerry. The term soft benching for Rapp. We'll get this in before a break. How often does it happen where maybe the story that's public is a different story than what's going on behind the scenes?
Oh, all the time. All the time. That happens a lot. Now, granted, every now and then you get the lunatic that can't squash anything down, and he just blurts out what he feels and tells you exactly how it is, and there is no reading between the lines. But it happens all the time, and in a way, it's kind of nice that there is a concern there for a long-term vet that has done a lot of good things for the franchise, that they want to softly do this. But this also isn't us, bringing in, Brian Dawkins or Sean Taylor or, there's so you want to make sure Rapp's okay, because there's a really good chance he's going to have to come right back in. Well, you got to massage it to where he's not like, the heck with you guys, I'm done. You bench me. So you got to there's a lot of psychological stuff to this.
That's part of, I was going to ask that, what does the path to him getting back in look like?
If you're getting, I think that's been going on, right? He's been around for a minute. This isn't he's been on the team since week one, right? Wasn't it pretty early in the season? He was part of it. So a couple months in, I'd like to think he's ready to go.
Yeah.
He was an early addition to the Bills alumni team. As Jeremy.
Oh, right. Very good. Right. The Bills alumni team. All right. When we'll get a break in, we got some comments to get to, including one I like about the Bills going all in. How would we react if the Bills go all in? That's one of our comments we've got. Drop us a comment, like or a subscribe. Rocking before this Bills-Panthers matchup, a big one down there in Charlotte for both teams. Bill Squad Show, your comments when we return, and that all-in question here on the Bill Squad Show. This episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda, move and be moved. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes, they sweat all the details, and Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. You can feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls. And with all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Time to get to some of your comments and questions here on the Bill Squad Show ahead of the Bills and Panthers game. You can drop something there in the chat, and we'll get to it. Start a few to get to, and we'll start rolling right here. First, from Buffalo Live, how exactly has Dorian Williams not played well? Wasn't he playing well last season in Milano's absence? Joe, I know you've talked a lot about Dorian Williams, who's got a lot of athleticism. What is it about his game that's not been trustworthy for this coaching staff?
I think it's just processing speed. A guy that just doesn't necessarily respond quick enough or correctly enough and gets himself out of position. The way I would describe Dorian Williams is he's fast, he's physical, and he makes a bunch of full speed mistakes. And I think you have to kind of live with that. And boy, you've seen certain teams that when they know he's on the field, they can kind of go after it with some misdirection stuff, and he vacates space and gives up plays. So there's a lot to love about the demeanor and temperament, but I just don't know that from an instincts perspective, he's a guy you can fully trust.
Tons of athleticism, not much feel is kind of how I would say it. I mean, his eyes aren't usually right, and he does chase ghosts, and good teams will take advantage of it.
Next comment from Trekkie Voice. I keep getting things about Tyler Lockett. Is he the guy we need? This is where I make the snarky comment that you can bet on him being in Bills training camp next year because he's about 4 years removed from his peak. I like to make that comment a lot because they love those guys in training camp. I'd like to craft a fantasy league about a receiver who's maybe done that comes to a Bills training camp. I don't think so for Tyler Lockett here.
I'm with you. I'd rather just see Elijah Moore get a little bit more opportunity. Along these lines, Jeremy, can I ask you a question?
Yes, anytime.
So, if you follow at Jeremy WGR on the Bird app, as we call it, X, whatever, Twitter.
Sure.
Good Morning Football tweeted out, name one player you'd want to unretire to help your former team. To nobody's surprise, you picked a receiver, but I was a little bit curious why you chose Eric Moulds. I don't think it's a wrong answer. I just want to know what put you in that spot.
Because, I'm a Diggs fan. He's not retired. And, of course, I don't know if he would fit. Moulds did everything. Moulds is A.J. Brown, right? Moulds is he was awesome. I didn't watch the Bills when Moulds was here, but, I know he was underrated. And I know that he was awesome and really didn't get much time with a top-tier quarterback. And the phrase I've been looking for 5 years about this, I finally heard somebody on a fantasy podcast reference, or maybe it was a film guy, but force multiplier. The reason I want receivers for Josh Allen is because Josh Allen is a force. And when you give him Eric Moulds, the two of them force multiply each other. So that's my answer. I would, of course, love anybody that could be great out there. And while Bruce Smith is a great answer, and there's a lot of good answers out there. I saw some right Mark Kelso. I saw a lot of answers. Yeah, I know, safety. But
really, Mark Kelso
I saw Mark Kelso. I saw Mark Kelso answer. But Moulds is amazing. Jerry, thoughts on Moulds?
Eric Moulds is an absolute dog. I would love that to happen. Moulds is like the complete, if you took the size and power athleticism of Keon Coleman and then put the route running, the polishedness, the hands of Andre Reed, and you put them together, you had Eric Moulds. Moulds was dynamic. He was physical, forceful. I love receivers that force the issue, and Eric forced the issue. And then if you watch the highlight tape, he was making a ton of one-handed catches before that stuff was, common, second nature where everybody does it nowadays. Moulds was an absolute dog, man.
Yeah, the most physical mismatch for sure that you could pick a receiver.
Yeah.
The other reason that this needs to happen is Eric Moulds retired with 9,995 receiving yards. Boy, I'd have a hard time sleeping. You know what I mean? I get those 5 yards and get to 10K.
He's 52. No. Just throw him on an orbit motion and let's get him 5 yards after the catch.
Some crap, holding call or something took away.
Dude, I saw some videos of him. He actually trains high school kids and athletes, college kids and stuff down in
right by me,
Mississippi, because he had Khalil down there for a while. Yeah. He could still go out and get a couple catches and get that 5 easy, no doubt.
Ask me, ask away anytime. Ask me any question. Joe, who'd your answer be? Jerry, who'd your answer be for any Bill that's retired to come back and join this team?
I picked Jerry Ostroski. I think.
Well, it's hard.
I should have picked that. It was right there.
If I'm just going to go ahead and say just one guy and knowing we don't certain needs, if it's not need-based pick, it's Bruce Smith, and that's not even close. If it's need-based, what we need right now, I've already sent Eric Moulds a one-way ticket to Buffalo because he can't go home. He has to stay.
I think I have to pick Bruce. If it had to be a receiver, the biggest need is probably Eric Moulds, but I think Bruce Smith's one of most special players to ever play.
Yes.
I mean, good Lord. Like
Well,
that size, that bend.
Did you see how easy it was for me to compare to take Keon and Dre
Andre
and
Reed? Yeah.
You don't do that with Bruce. He's just Bruce. He's just Bruce.
Man.
Question from Steve, who asked us, would the panel be mad if next season, Bean went full bleep them picks and tried to buy a Super Bowl financed by our future? Depends what they buy. For me, that depends what they buy, but I think that this is not that crazy an idea for any team. There different teams are approaching this these builds different ways. And what are you buying? Are you buying the next Myles Garrett who decides he wants to ask for a trade, or then is Justin Jefferson force his way out, or is it?
Are you saying that we're going to get high enough in the draft that there's picks there that he can't mess up, or you know what I'm saying?
Why? I don't know. Like the idea of just going all in, I would fully support it almost every year that they decide to do that.
Well, it's certainly a ripe time to discuss that, where the 2024 class is just not giving this team much. And what are they getting from their top 3 picks right now? Pretty much nothing, right? So I certainly, you're like, well, what's the point, right? These guys aren't helping the team. Let's give it away for improving commodities. And so I can understand why the temperature might reveal that a little bit. This is what I'll say. I know it's a boring answer, but just be right. Just be right about it. I think that's what it comes down to. There's a lot of different ways to get it done through a lot of different philosophies, but ultimately it has to pan out a little bit better than it has. And for, Josh to not have to cover up as much as he has.
The biggest variable for what they would do next year is who's the offensive coordinator. Like Joe Brady could leave for a head coaching job, or I don't know. What if he doesn't get a job? Is he definitely have the job next year? We'll have to see how this season goes. We talked about it on WGR today. Like, listen, I'm someone that, of course, has super high standards for this offense. I think the hardest job in town is Bill's offensive coordinator, because everybody's looking for 50 points a game every game. I am. And I know Josh Allen's great. And, you've got this great offensive line, and now you got this great running back who's putting up big numbers. And, they had a great season last year. And what did I want at the end of the season? I wanted more. So it's a tough job. I get that. I had that written down, guys, for Just Asking today, for our Just Asking question. Just asking, would you like a third season of Joe Brady calling this offense?
I'd like to see the rest of this one first before I say that, because over the last 2 weeks, I've been very frustrated with it. I've articulated that, and it's really flied in the face of a lot of the ideas that I've had, and I think I've been right. I've never been in the heat of battle. I've never had to, get out of a 2nd and 15 or get into a 1st and 20, and I think some of those moments affected the way that he called the game. But I'd like to see this year play out. I do think the next offensive coordinator has got a good chance to be like Davis Webb or I don't know, maybe Ronald Curry. I don't really know what the team thinks of him, but I think Davis Webb's a guy they'd love to bring in and have be the OC.
I'll make the go ahead, Jerry.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
I was going to say, I'll make the obligatory Brian Dable mention, but he might save his job the way the Jackson Dart's playing. Then again, if they blow leads like they did against Denver, maybe not. It's going to be a tough line for him to walk.
Yeah. Or don't go choke out the doctor in the blue tent.
Give me Dayball, but with Aaron Cromer's run scheme. That was my biggest exception with Dayball.
Okay, you go ahead.
He just cared about numbers. There was nothing creative about the run scheme. It was like, okay, we're +1, run the ball. It's like, man, what if you actually did some dynamic things? So give me Dayball's passing game with Cromer's run scheme.
And you just brought something up that I was going to get into, is that, the bye week for me and these things make me contemplate stuff and make me wonder, and I come up with these hypotheticals as opposed to trying to find the nearest high point to jump off of. But when I look at this team right now and I look at Brady, is some of what he's trying to force him auditioning for possibly a head coaching job? And does he want to do this stuff because, like you just said, Dable didn't care about Cromer? And we all know anytime we talk about a Buffalo Bills offense and running the ball, the first word out of everybody's mouth is not Joe Brady. It's the innovative Aaron Cromer and his ability to let guys do what they do well, and finding high leverage offensive linemen to play in hinge as opposed to down on the, all these different things. And they're not talking about Brady. Could some of what we've seen out of him trying to force the ball, trying to make Keon Coleman into this receiver he's just having a hard time becoming. Is some of that maybe him trying to audition, maybe a little bit of arrogance? I don't know. I mean, things that make you go, as they used to say.
Mm-hmm. CNC Music Factory. That's
yes, that is
right?
Exactly
Yeah.
correct.
All
well
right.
done, man. Well done.
I'm old enough for that. All right. So Bills and Panthers on Sunday. Again, we won't have
I totally figured him as a Fish fan, not CNC Music Factory.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh no. You guys think you guys think I'm some sort of hippie. Like I don't know where I get that vibe, but my
Do you have a
wife kinda
sweatshirt?
is.
Do you have a sweatshirt with bears on it? That are
None.
Okay. All right.
No.
Good. All right.
No Grateful Dead, no Fish. I mean, it's all good. Have you seen, by the way, one last note? Did you see the Oregon Ducks Grateful Dead inspired jerseys?
I want one.
Okay. If you haven't seen it, Google it. Check it out. It's kind of amazing that a college football team just decided, what haven't we done? How about the Grateful Dead?
That's what I thought. Is you guys ran out of ideas.
Nah, man, that's pretty sweet.
Is there relevance? Is there something between Oregon and the Grateful Dead that would make that make sense? Because like the UCF spaceship or NASA uniforms every week, I'm like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Joe.
What?
Yes, there's a lot. There's a lot.
Well, there's my ignorance. See, the more I talk about things that aren't football, the more I get exposed. So I'll
it's
just
that
stop
Jerry
with that.
Garcia loved the Pac-10. That's what it is.
Is that it?
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, we'll get out of here. Bills and Panthers Sunday, 1:00. We're back on Monday. Just a little note there. Post-game thoughts. We'll be sure firing off some takes, but we'll compose ourselves and come in on Monday to wrap up what is hopefully a Bills win. If it's a Panthers win, it's big for them. I mean, they'd get to 5-3 and have a quite a resume builder for them in a very, very tough NFC. So big one for them as well. So we'll be back with you on Monday. Thanks for tuning in. Give us a like, a subscribe, drop a comment to us, how you're liking the show, anything like that. And until next time, go Bills.
Here's to no longer improving resumes of other teams. Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.